It does appear that CJ Stroud is going to be the guy, or that Bryce Young rather is going to be the guy. CJ Stroud, just at this point, I'm just used to it. But Albert Breer pointed this out, said apparently he blew everybody away in Carolina with this, what is it, like an SAT test or the Wonderlic Light or whatever they called it, that he was off the charts. Talked about it last week, and now all the information coming out is that apparently Bryce Young, Brady's guy, been preaching Bryce Young and telling people about it for a couple of years, is going to go number 1 overall to the Carolina Panthers. That's how this thing looks like it's headed.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's hard, I think, when you're comparing him and CJ Stroud. You watch them both, and they play at a really high level. I would say CJ Stroud in a clean pocket is more accurate than anyone. I mean, that kid really is surgical the way he plays the game. When he gets pressure, different story, and people, everyone points back to the Georgia game and say, well, that's when he showed off his athleticism, and that's when he was great under duress. I'm like, well, what about the rest of the games in his career? You kind of have to look at the entire body of work. With Bryce Young, there's just something about the way he plays the game. It's hard to put your finger on exactly what that is. For me, he anticipates. He can shape throws regardless of how his body's positioned. Like he makes some of the more awkward body throws. You mean when his feet aren't set, he's facing the wrong direction. It doesn't look like he's ready to throw, and he still gets the ball out accurately in the right spot to the right person. I mean, his decision-making, his anticipation, his just overall ability to make throws is incredible. I mean, I'm telling you, he is such a unique talent. It's just the size that people worry about and whether or not he'll be durable enough at the next level. And I think he will be because of the way he plays the game. He doesn't put himself in harm's way. He's super, super smart. And, there were some people in these reports who he was behind the Alabama offensive line. And these, I was like, that's how you know that you can just throw out that report. Alabama's offensive line this year was probably one of the worst they've had in a while. I mean, he was constantly under duress at times. It was not a good offensive line. He was throwing the top-rated wide receiver talent. Okay, again. Didn't watch the tape. The receivers at Alabama this year had the hardest time separating. There's times when he had to buy time just to allow something to open up downfield. Now, if you said that about CJ Stroud, you'd be accurate, right? Both tackles are going to be drafted. The interior center is going to be drafted. Three of the 5 guys on his offensive line will be drafted. Jackson Smith-Njigba may be the only wide receiver taken in the first round. I mean, he played with a bunch of talent. And Marvin Harrison Jr., who would be a top 5 pick if he was draft eligible, he can't even come out this year. So, if those are your concerns, someone apparently in this report about Bryce Young is pointing at the wrong guy. But like I said, I've thought the world of this young man since I saw him play in a spring game a couple of years back. And he should be number 1 overall if you're basing things off of just the tape. But apparently there's this S2 test, and that helps with identifying processing. And it's no surprise that he has the best processing skills of any of the quarterbacks because if you watch the games, you see that on tape. Like that's one of those things. It's hard to put your finger on what it is. It's the fact that he can make a really, really good decision very fast, and it usually ends up being the right one.
It could change. It could change one more time. Right before we get there, it could change. So for all the great things that we can say about one of the quarterbacks or another quarterback, it could change. But I think we know it's between those two. And it's safe to say it's between those two. So and like everything that was just said, I mean I think Q covered it very well. Bryce's body of work has been solid since, before even it got to the point of where public consumption became at a massive pace or massive point of consumption. I mean, Q told us he's going to win the Heisman. Here's your guy that's going to win the Heisman. I think he said it right after the spring game. And he ended up winning the Heisman.
By the way, 10-1 you could have gotten that at if you listened to the gambling savant that is Brady Quinn. 10-1. That's kind of the money we were handed out here.
Well, it was a pretty bold, strong call that ended up playing out.
It's one of those lay it on the table and show everybody what you're working with.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's what I'm talking about.
You went there pretty early today, but you know what? I mean, I'm proud of you, you know, and that's the reason why one of these guys is going to go number one as well, is because you come to expect them to deliver certain things like you just did, and they do it, you know, and they do it. And for what it's worth, you know, CJ Stroud had a strong, he had a strong, you know, campaign this past year, and I don't see there being a lot of downside to CJ Stroud. I really don't. And this Carolina team is a team that is in a building mode. I mean, I know they came around and did fairly well at the end of last season. I know they're getting an offensive savant and Reich. I think this team may be on the upswing, but I mean, I would ask you guys this: do we definitively know if they are on legitimately on the upswing in terms of how good of a team they're going to be or could be next year? And I think that may be the reason that dictates what quarterback that they would go after. Are you going to go after a quarterback that you know can take you all the way to a championship game and provide you the leadership and provide you what you need in order to be able to get over the hump to win those games, and come into a program like Carolina's and be able to handle kind of whatever the growing pains are that they're going to go through from a mature level? Or are you going to go are you going to go with a commodity that may be, is stronger, bigger, than the other guy from Alabama, but hasn't proven that they may have all of those components necessary or needed to be able to build, from where you are? Will the growing pains be, harder with CJ Stroud than what they would be with someone who has been probably more developed? And I don't know if that's an unfair statement, but I would assume he's been, Bryce Young has been probably a more developed, a more refined quarterback at the college level.
It feels like the growing pains would be more of an issue for Houston picking at 2 than it would be Carolina at 1. Carolina feels like
I don't disagree with that.
They've built an infrastructure that's all about finding the quarterback and developing the quarterback, and that's why Frank Reich is there. And this is not a shot at DeMeco Ryans, who everybody loves, but it just feels like if you had to put your money on which quarterback's going to be in the best spot to kind of go through all those growing pains, it's Carolina, which is why I'm fascinated to see if C.J. Stroud ends up in Houston, what that career trajectory looks like in comparison to if he would have gone to Carolina.
Well, look at what they've surrounded the quarterback position, with. You got Frank Reich, former quarterback. He's done a good job with quarterbacks throughout his career. You go back to his time in Indy. I'm not so sure we make him the fall guy, even though it didn't work out with him as a head coach there. I think Jim Irsay and the Treeliners, there's probably a lot more to be said.